We're going to be making an enlargement here, and we're going to be using the number 4 enlarger in the corner of the darkroom. The first thing we're going to do is set up the enlarging easel. I recommend to students is to take a piece of 8 by 10 photo paper and on the back draw lines that indicate the size print you want to make. Here it would be a 6" by 6" square on the 8 by 10 paper, and use that as a guide to help you set the easel up. The easel has 3 slots. The first one's for 5 by 7 paper, and the second one is the one we want for 8 by 10. We just make sure we get kind of centered in the slot and it's solidly in there. Now we're going to turn these knobs on the side and get them lined up with the lines we have drawn on here. And there, we're ready to make a 6 by 6" enlargement on the 8 by 10 paper. The negative carriers are on the wall here, and they should be arranged by format. We want the 120 negative carrier, that's square, 2 1/4 by 2 1/4 for the Holga negatives. And we're going to actually take this out into the outer darkroom, into the light, to get our negative in place. Alright, so here's our proof sheet that we made from our Holga negative roll, and we're just going over it, trying to figure out which might be the good shots to print. I'm using a red China marker to indicate what I think might be printable. Most of these look pretty good. I don't know if any of them are really great photos, but we'll see. Alright, the one that is kind of interesting me is this landscape down along the river. So we're going to start out trying that one. We have our negative carrier here, and we're going to put it on the light table to assist us in getting the negative centered in here. The negative carrier has a backside which has these notches, and it has this little form that helps get it centered into the enlarger. So we're going to lift off the top part, take our negative out of the sleeve, center it in the square here, keep the negative in the strip of 3 so you can move it around, and we're going to center it in the carrier, and it's in between these 4 pins. And there it's in place. Next we'll be trying to get the dust off the negative. Sometimes it looks like there isn't dust on there, but there's always dust on there. And we just want to get the bigger chunks off by blowing on it with the canned air. And visually checking that it's fairly dust-free. Alright, now we'll turn on our enlarger by pushing the on switch on the power pack back there, and the fan will start making noise. We're actually going to put the negative carrier in the enlarger now. To do that, we want to make sure the head is raised up by pulling this lever down. We put it in with the notches to the back and just kind of put it in place until we feel it kind of fall into place so it's real solid. And then it's time to push this lever up and make sure this is closed. Here we're going to select our lens. We'd have the choice here. There's a 50mm lens that would make a circular vignetted image that we don't want. There's a 135 that would be useful. It's intended for 4 by 5 format. It would be useful if you wanted to make a smaller sized enlargement. But we're going to use the biggest ones here, which is the 100mm Vivitar, and it's very sharp lens. Okay, now we're ready to turn on the enlarger light by pushing the focus button, and we're ready to set the enlarger height and the focus. So the first thing we'll do is make sure that the aperture is all the way open on the lens. So there's an outer ring on this one that you turn that makes the image brighter and darker. We want all the way bright for focusing. And actually we don't have the bellows in the right place here, so I have to turn this key towards the back, to the side, and then actually physically lift the bellows up almost all the way, and then we'll be able to get the focus correct for the size print we're making. Here we're in focus, but the image is too large, so we're actually cranking the enlarger head down, and then as we crank it down we'll have to refocus. Also notice we have our piece of photo paper in here. It makes it a little easier to focus than if you're focusing on the yellow surface. So now I'm getting close. I have this, another thing to keep in mind is the focus button here kicks out after 25 seconds. So I had to hit that again. Now I'm ready to do my fine focusing. And again, to focus, it's this knob on the right. The crank that's behind that's for raising enlarger up and down. Alright, to make sure I have nice clean edges on here, I'm actually going to just move the blades slightly in because for some reason this image is not quite square, which has to do with the negative carrier, I'm guessing. I'm just going to make sure the blades are just slightly into the image. Alright, so now the aperture is all the way open, the image is very bright. I'm going to want it to be somewhere in between all the way bright and all the way dim. With this image, I want to dim down quite a bit. And if you can see the numbers on the lens, you're looking for an aperture that's around 11 or 16 usually. This one I can't really see. I'm just going to make it so the image is visible but on the dim side. Now I'm ready to make a test strip, so I'm going to turn off the focus. I'm going to do 2 -1s to get our time to 3. And this is an exceptionally flat negative, so I'm going to just start out at a number 4 contrast. So this contrast goes from 0 to 5. 4 would be a very high contrast, not the highest, but very high. Next I'm going to make a test strip and go into the 8x10 RC paper safe, and there just happens to be a small piece of paper in there, and that's what I'm going to use for my test strip. I'm going to take out my guide paper, and I'm going to set this to make sure that it's actually, I'm going to put it in a diagonal across the image, so I make sure I get the snow, the water, the sky, and the tree. Here I'm going to be making a test strip. The first thing I'm going to do is just hit the foot switch down below and give the entire strip 3 seconds of light. Now I'm going to try to cover up about 1/8 of it, hit it again, so now that what's underneath the black only has 3 seconds. Now I have 6 seconds. 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, and 24. Here we are at the developer tray. We slide our strip in underneath the developer, set the timer at 1 minute, and use the tongs to make sure that our test strip stays submerged here. And here we'll see the gradated strips indicating the different exposure times. Alright, our timer just clicked, and it's time to take this test strip out of the developer. Sometimes it's a little hard to grab it with the tongs. There, I got it. Okay, I'm going to let it drip off, and I'm going to move it into the rinse tray and put my developer tongs back into the developer tray, and now give it a little 10-second rinse in the running water. Okay, now I'm moving from the rinse tray to the fixer. Put that there. Make sure it's agitated well. Use the tongs to keep it submerged. Hit the timer again for 1 minute. Okay, our 1 minute is up. We're going to take our test strip out of the fixer. Let the fixer drip back into the tray. Move it into the rinse tray. And we're just going to rinse it for a few seconds because we're going to be throwing this strip out. We're just using it to establish a time. And we're going to take this strip out into the white light and check out what our tones look like. So now I'm actually going to move the tray so I can carry it out of the darkroom and into the white light. Alright, so now we're going to check our times. So the lightest strip here is 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. It's looking okay. 18's looking a little dark. We don't have the darkest black in this tree region, which I feel like we should here. I think we're going to have to switch to a 4.5 or 5 filter and use a time of around 18 seconds. The higher the contrast, the more time you have to give, so you have to err on the darker side when you're actually changing the contrast. We'll start out with a number 5 and then decide if maybe we need to back off or give it more time. Alright, first thing we're going to do is change our contrast. We're going to go from the 4 to the 5, which might be too far, but we'll decide that after looking at the 5 if we want to back off to a 4.5. The time that we thought would be right was about 18 seconds. I'm actually going to just go with 20 seconds. So plus 10, then some minus 1s. 20 seconds of number 5 contrast. Alright, so now we're going to get our paper out of the paper safe. And we're going to take a full sheet and make sure that it's glossy side up, not the matte side, but the kind of more sticky glossy side. You're going to lift up the enlarging easel, slip the paper into the slot here, make sure it's solidly in there and kind of centered. Okay, now we're bringing the blades down. And now we're going to give the entire area the 20 seconds by just not doing anything except hitting the foot feet. Take out our piece of paper, move it over to the chemicals, slip it underneath the developer, set our timer at 1 minute. Make sure that we keep agitating it. Okay, so after 1 minute, we lift the piece of paper out of the tray with the tongs, put it in the rinse tray, move the tongs back to the developer, give it 10 seconds of rinsing. Now we move into the fixer. The rinse tongs back there. Set our timer at 1 minute again. Keep agitating, keep submerging the print with the tong. Alright, after our 1 minute, we remove the print from the fixer, let it drip off a little, and move it into the wash tray. We may want to keep this print. Looks a little on the dark side, but it might actually look good in the light. So what I'm going to do is actually rinse it for 1 minute just to make sure the fixer is removed. After our 1 minute, I'm going to take this out of the wash, put it in a tray, and take it out of the back darkroom and get out into the white light and analyze what we have here. This print is definitely on the dark side, but has kind of to it. This is a little unfortunate. That is caused by dust inside the camera. Obviously I did not check good enough. And some of these white flecks in the sky are caused by dust I did not get off the negative. The thing that I think will improve this print is slightly less time. We'll move from 20 seconds to maybe about 17. And also, I'm going to use a dodging tool to get more detail in the river and tree area to the right. Alright, so we're at 20 seconds. I'm actually going to take that all the way down to 16. You'll notice sometimes when you hit a -1 on the timer, it won't give you -1. It'll give you +9. So sometimes you just have to play around with this thing and try to psych it out. Here I'll do a -10. That gave me 19. Now I'll go back to -1s. And I actually do get it back down to 16 where we want to be. I'm going to keep the contrast at number 5 for now. So here I'm getting a new piece of paper. Putting it in the easel. Close the easel. Now I'm going to get a dodging tool, which we have a whole box of in the corner of the darkroom here. And here's a homemade one somebody made with just a towel on a piece of aluminum wire, and I'm just going to appropriate this one for my needs here. What I'm actually going to be doing is giving that small part of the image projection a little less time. So I'm going to do that by waving this through during the exposure. So here I'm giving the whole thing the 16 seconds, and that little area that's like river and trees, I'm going to just move this wand through and give it just slightly less time. Drip off, put it into the rinse tray. Now we'll go into the fixer. Set the timer for 1 minute again. There's a hooked area to the minute hand of this timer, and that's what you're clicking to get to 1 minute. Alright, our timer's about to indicate that we've been fixing for 1 minute. And take this out of the fixer. Move it into the rinse, and we can see that even though there's only 4 seconds difference in this time, this print is significantly lighter than our first one. A lot of that's due to the dodging in the center area. If you look at the sky, top of the sky, the difference is less dramatic. Here we're going to put both of these prints in a large tray so we can examine the differences. Our new print's pretty close to what I want. One thing that I think could improve it is just to get a little brighter of an area in the center, which would mean a little more dodging. And then one thing that's bothering me about this visually is I want the viewer's eye to be attracted more to the center. So I think I'm going to try to darken the bottom and the top of the image just to emphasize the center area. And I'm going to do that by giving it more time, which is referred to as burning. I'm actually going to knock 1 second off our time, take it down to 15 seconds, and leave the contrast at number 5. Okay. This time I'm going to be a little more aggressive about my dodging. I'm going to go all the way across and keep dodging through most of the exposure. Now I'm going to take the black card, and I'm only going to give the very bottom of the image about another 5 or 10 seconds, and maybe about 5 seconds at the top of the image. So it's important that when you do this, that you keep this piece of black cardboard moving so you don't get a real distinct line where the image is getting more time. Okay, so I'm going to just leave it set at 15 seconds, give it about 5-6 seconds at the bottom, And then I'm going to switch to the top and just give the top another 5 seconds or so. And we're going to see how this looks. Okay, again, we're going to take both of these last two prints into the white light and examine them and decide where to go from here. Alright, so again, we're taking our last two prints and comparing them in the big tray out in the white light. The extra dodging might be a little heavy-handed, but I really like how it's separating this lonely tree from the background and really emphasizing that as the subject of the picture. The burning at the top and bottom, too heavy-handed. It needed to be more like 2 or 3 seconds rather than 6. And although I don't mind all the darkening on the edge, this is a tree actually on the left margin, a tree trunk. I do feel like it should be balanced out with just a slight second or two of burning on the right edge. So the print I'm going to try to make now will be a bit of a compromise between these two. This seems like micromanaging a little bit, but I'm actually going to make this at 15.5 seconds. Contrast will stay at 5. Okay, this is our main exposure with the dodging through the center area. I'm still gonna dodge the entire horizon, but I'm gonna stay a little bit more towards the right this time, just to make it just slightly more like that first print. Now I'm gonna burn the edges. I'm just gonna hit the timer for the full time again, but just give the bottom just like a couple seconds, the top a couple seconds, and the right side, I'm going to get down kind of low and just give that one little flash. Alright, the middle print here is our newest one. I think I succeeded in compromising between our last two prints. I'm fairly satisfied with this. I'm not sure about the burn on this edge, but it looks a little harsh, but it kind of balances the tree nice. And Holga photography is just never that precise, so I think I might just live with that. I feel like I got nice separation between our star here and the background. There's some pretty bright white areas on the horizon across the river. So I think this is going to be it. We're just going to wash these 3 prints for 5 minutes and put them in the dryer. Okay, so now we're going to be squeegeeing the prints after the 5-minute rinse. Just throwing them in a stack in that tray to take them out to the drying area. Alright, so here I'm putting the prints out on the drying screens. And I'm going to take a piece of paper towel and just try to get all the surface water off the prints. I'm just going to turn the blower here onto the fan setting, and in about a half hour these prints should be perfectly dry.